Welcome back, all our 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation, and today I will be bringing you not only my list, but also we're going to talk a little smack about some of the lesser Necron units. Honorable mention to the Obelisk didn't make it in this list, and I'll tell you why. This list will be going up against Lane's special project that he's been working on for the past couple of months. We will be facing off against the Kroots. The Kroots, you may be saying. Yes, a full 100% Kroot army. No Tau, no problem. This is Kroot to the T. Finished, painted, table ready. So we are going to face off against it with some of the worst and underplayed units in the Necron Codex. Why? Because there's not a lot of anti-tank in there. However, after a couple little tweaks with this list, Lane's feeling a little more confident about it. So hopefully we'll be able to see this thing in a more competitive setting here in the near future. However, this army looks gorgeous. I'm so happy to show and put this on the channel. So that is going to be what we're going to be playing against today. So with that being said, I didn't want to go too heavy into this Kroot army since it is such a skewed build and it needs some practice and some testing. Again, the Kroot don't have a lot of anti-vehicle options in there. So this is going to be a different type of game. So before we go and throw this into a more meta list, let's get a couple reps with this thing on the table and see how it can do. So for this, we decided I would play the Necrons, and I asked the community and was given a bunch of feedback on a bunch of units that we feel are very, very underplayed. Some of these I've had discussions with people and come up with some stuff about this, and this is the army we came out with. Now, I said special mention to the Obelisk because I did not want to bring the Obelisk today because I wanted to bring something else adorable, which you'll see it be meeting in a few minutes. The Obelisk, while it doesn't do a lot of work, going into a full Kroot army, the Obelisk might look good. The Tesla Sphere and just the volume of shots actually could do some work. And not to mention the fact that since it's so bulky and so difficult for the Kroot to hit and take down, it might have been a little rougher than we wanted to throw at Lane for this first matchup while he still figured out this army. So the Obelisk is going to be my honorable mention for this. And as we go forward, I'm going to be talking about a lot of these units and why they don't see as much play. What we've seen in the game, what we've seen in the meta, and what makes these units a little less likely. Feel free to add your own 2 cents down in the comment section and maybe some ways that you found to actually be able to make these units work in competitive play. Remember, we're talking the end of Leviathan and going into Pariah Nexus now. So, why is the Obelisk so bad before we go over to the army? Well, it just doesn't do anything else. It's expensive in points, so it's a big, bulky Titanic unit, but it doesn't really do anything. The Tesla Spheres, they kind of cap out how much damage they're going to really do, and for its point cost, it's not there. It's a very cool looking model. You know, the alternative form of the Tesseract Vault. I love the thing. And there's been a couple times that the thing's randomly popped up and went, hey, look, it can do something. But there's not really a detachment that gives it the boost that it needs to be able to have some AP or a way to really push the Tesla Spheres on that thing over the top. So the Obelisk is going to be an honorable mention for an underplayed, undervalued, and underdata sheeted unit in whatever way you want to say. With all that being said, we're going to jump over into this list so we can start talking about these units and all their non-Necron-y glory. All right, let's take a look. All right, here is the list. And yeah, don't rub your eyes too hard. That is a gauze pylon sitting right in the middle. So for starters, this is going to be the Obeisance Phalanx because of some of the units that I'm running. I feel like the Obeisance Phalanx is going to give me the most power that I could do. Just being able to tap into some of the strats and some of the other abilities because of some of the stuff we're trying to do here. So, as I said, this list is built out of units that we don't see a lot of play. So let's jump in and start talking about. Now, first, number one, let's talk about the elephant in the room. And elephant is a fitting word for the size of this monstrosity. The Gauze Pylon. Why is the Gauze Pylon not competitive? It's very, very simple. It comes down to one thing. It is not legal. This thing is Legends. This is a Forge World model. This is the legitimate Forge World Gauze Pylon. And it is not legal anymore. It was moved to Legends at the beginning of the edition. I have one, legitimate Forge World. I want to put it out here on the channel. Now, what does this thing even do? Some of you might be like, what is this? First of all, it is OC0. So strike one against it. It is 210 points. Strike two. It's kind of pricey. It has a weird gauze flux array, which is only a 6-inch range and does, I think it actually is Tesla. I'd have to double check on that, but it's really bad. It's like strength 4 AP0 and a 6-inch range. The fortification itself has the ability that it has an aura to give a 5-up invulnerable save. Okay, pretty cool. And on top of that, it has a big gun. Ooh, yeah, this is where it gets exciting. Are you ready? Are you ready for this one? Ballistic skill 4. Strength, like 16 or something. AP 5. D6 plus 6 damage, but it's one shot. One shot with a big gun. Yeah. Oh, it's got anti-fly. Yeah. All right. So those Thunderhawk gunships that come across the table, they can get scared of this thing. Okay. Also provides cover. All in all, it's pretty cool looking. That's why it's a letter C, because it's cool. I like the model. And so that's why he's coming in here today. Because he's, I have him and I wanted to run him. And so he's going to see play, and he'll probably make it through the entire game because, again, Lane will really have no reason to go after this thing at all. If it kills one Kroot model, I will be happy. All right, moving on to the other stuff. First off, we'll stay with the fortification. We'll over to the Convergence of Dominion. We are running 3 individual Convergence, the Starcely. Now, why the Convergence doesn't see play? Again, this is an OC0 unit, and even more so with Pariah Nexus. Now they can't do action. They can't do actions. They can't really score any points for you. I think they might still be able to score engage, but that's really about it. Or help for engage, I should say. And that's really about it. And that's still your deployment zone type territories where you're usually at. Can't pick them up out of Hypercrypt because fortifications are not allowed to ever be in reinforcements, sadly. Now, I think that these guys, a single of them, might be able to have some play in some lists as we see data sheets change and points change in the future. We could see one of these guys slip into a list because they do give off a 6-up feel no pain aura. So that's pretty nice. That, just a 6-up feel no pain on these guys instead of the reanimation from 4. And also they provide a little bit of cover so you can kind of clog a hole for terrain against some fast-moving armies. So, and they're not that expensive now. They're relatively cheap. So I could see one of these getting slotted into a list and popping in there. 3, on the other hand, yeah, not so much. But we're running 3 individual because I had told Lane, and I believe with this list, I have built a really, really super durable list. And as long as I don't move anywhere, it's going to be very hard to kill me. All right, moving on. We have the Catacomb Command Barge. Why is the Catacomb Command Barge not seeing play? I'll tell you, it's one very simple rule. The Catacomb Command Barge, all in all, is actually not a bad data sheet. It's relatively tough. It can reduce damage on higher strength weapons. And depending on the detachment you're running, if you run Awakened Dynasty, you can get this guy a Feel No Pain. So why is he not really being run? I feel like the biggest reason we're not seeing this guy played is A, his point's a little high. No lone op access on him at all, so he's really just kind of out there and getting hit. But most importantly, he is not an overlord. This means out of the obeisance phalanx, the one that would probably benefit from him the most and be able to be a good place for the Catacomb to be, he doesn't get any of the buffs. And also that does mean that some of the enhancements that target overlords, he can't take as well. There is an enhancement that gives an overlord precision on all of its weapons. This would be excellent for the Catacomb and make the Catacomb playable. We've dealt with Catacombs in the past that had sniper capabilities in previous editions, and they weren't that terrible. Having the Catacomb be able to do some stuff like that would be amazing, and it's very disappointing that we have not seen the fix to this data sheet. I firmly believe that this is a mistake and that this should be an overlord model. Considering it's an overlord on there, you literally get an overlord with the kit. I really feel like this should be an Overlord, and this is a mistake that has been an oversight that needs to be addressed so he can be run in the Obeisance Phalanx and actually see some power and play. Next up, we'll stay with the same kit, which hopefully will be a reason for them to fix this because it's another model in that same kit, the Annihilation Barge. Now, the Annihilation Barge is actually not that bad of a data sheet, even for its point costs. What really makes it fall to the wayside is that everything else in comparison. This is a unit that does not really receive detachment buffs from the detachments that it goes with. It already has its own involve. It has its own defensive characteristics and profile. It's got a pretty cool ability where it can hit units and do arcing damage and do mortal wounds to other units nearby, which is good. And the Twin Tesla Destructor is not that bad of a gun. The thing is that getting this thing running, there's no detachment that really supports it. And that makes it very difficult to want to run this thing when a lot of other options, as far as a vehicle, as far as range weaponry is concerned, do this job better. Dropping it in points still really wouldn't probably include it because it just doesn't teeter over in that very strong role as it did in other editions where you could really hamper into those sustained hits and really be able to turn this thing into just a absolute shrapnel of firepower. If somehow this thing can get into better sustained in the future, maybe we'll see that with some rerolls in some ways. But right now, just the lack of ability to really trigger into those sustained hits, just so many other units have that role better. Whether it's the Doomsday Arc, the Canoptic Doomstalker, or Locust Heavy Destroyers, these are all better options as far as a ranged threat than the Annihilation Barge. Even if you take the Locust Heavies with the Enigmatic Exterminator, that is a better choice at 150 points than one of these, sadly. Maybe drop it way down in points. You could see it make play, but unfortunately right now, the way it sits, it's not really going to happen. Not really looking too good. Next up, the Triarch Praetorians. Why are these guys not seeing play? Points. 120 points for 5 of these guys. And I know, we have to pay a premium because we can reanimate stuff. However, these guys really don't have a lot of different ways to get. There's not a lot of special reanimation for these guys. You know, a couple little strat here, maybe this, that, there, and the other there. They're still not seeing it. And then on top of it, their damage output is not that good. And that's going to be something we're going to see as a theory with another unit here very soon. I have mine with the spears because that's how they're modeled. I know the particle caster is kind of the option people are going with because of the fact that it at least gets more shots at the dev wounds. I like the 2 damage. Even though it's a low amount of shots, low shots, low attacks, it's 2 damage. So at least if it does hit, it can take out a Marine. Again, with the Obeisance Phalanx, I'm hoping I can run a little bit of stuff with these guys. I feel like 95, 100 points, I'd start considering them in more lists. But that 120 points is just way, way, way too much when there's so many things that do the job of a deep striking unit better. Look at, and that's a big part of it too, look at things like the Ophidian Destroyers. The Ophidian Destroyers are significantly cheaper and can up and down the entire game. And when you start saying, oh, but look at the damage, look at the wounds. Okay, you have 9 wounds for 3 Ophidian Destroyers, where you have 10 wounds for 5 of the Triarch Praetorians. Easier to reanimate the Praetorians? Yes. Also easier to kill the Praetorians. Toughness 5 on the Praetorians. It does make it a little bit better, but no involve, nothing there. Same with the Ophidians. You know, we're not comparing anything better in that. But the Ophidians at least can rip infantry apart. I don't feel like these guys have anything that they can really rip apart except basic Space Marines. And for the most part, we don't struggle with basic 3-up saves with power armor. We struggle with the 3-up saves, power armor, 2 wounds when you start stacking Feel No Pains and Involves and all this other stuff on them. And when you stack that, the Praetorians fail there too, whether it's particle casters or the Rod of the Covenant. All in all, these guys are just a miss because they don't do the damage. They deep strike when other units can still do it better. Ophidian destroyers are probably the golden package if you're looking for that. If you're looking for deep striking objective units, Ophidians are still by far way better. And it just makes these guys very difficult to love. And it sucks because this is a unit that tends to always, always fall to the wayside in the Necron army. Yes, there's a couple times they've popped up for a couple lists here and there, but for the most part, this is a unit that really just never seems to make it fully there. It's usually missing one key element, and right now I feel like the element it's missing is it's just way too expensive to slot this into most lists. Next up, let's go over into the Lich Guard. Lich Guard, you're saying, but Lich Guard are really good. Yes, Lich Guard are pretty good still, but not the ones with spears. Now, Lich Guard with spears could see some home in Hypercrypt, where you can port them across and charge them out of a monolith where they hit and not really do all that well. Not really a lot of options to be able to get these guys super boosting on their hit rolls and things like that. They don't have a lot of attacks. On top of it, when you take away the shield, suddenly AP2 kind of matters when they're now on a 5-up and only 2 wounds apiece. These guys crumble relatively quick, especially since they don't have the support of taking a Cryptek with them at all. You know, no Orican in there, no Chronomancer, no Technomancer for a Feel No Pain, nothing to give them the extra defense. At least Orican could give them that 4-up invuln so they were playable a little bit at pre-Codex. Now, these guys, unfortunately, they don't really see play. I'm happy to run these because I have all these Pewter Pariah models. Those who know what pariahs are, please comment down below if you remember the days of the pariahs. But I felt it's fitting in Pariah Nexus to run these guys. They will be led by an Overlord with Translocation Shroud. Now, the Translocation Shroud Overlord is one that I have seen in a couple armies competitively. I've run him competitively, so he's not necessarily a dead pick. But I'm taking him with a Res Orb with the squad, so we can try and get the squad into a position to be able to then move out and charge and do some damage. Since they don't have the defense, I want to kind of supplement it with speed. Again, obeisance phalanx, so we're not really kind of getting we're putting these guys on the table. And then last, we have 2 20-man squads of Necron warriors. Now, what you're going to say, whoa, hold on, DJ. Now, some of this stuff you probably can understand, but warriors, I've seen those in some competitive lists. I've seen some top lists, winning GTs that have had Necron warriors in it. And you are right. There are some lists that have Necron warriors in them as bulk troops to have a 20-man, especially in Hypercrypt, where you can use these guys to really control the board and hold your opponent back in a zone. They're excellent blocking units. But the damage aspect of them and fully kitting them out is a different variation we see. When you talk about Necron warriors, when you talk about taking these guys and using them to zone out your opponent and for these tricksy plays out of things like Hypercrypt, it kind of takes away from what Necron warriors should be. And that's one of the reasons that I'm running these. It's not because Necron warriors aren't getting run. It's that Necron warriors aren't getting run like Necron warriors. They're not getting overloaded with characters. They're not getting overloaded with this power. They're not being used in aggressive outputs. And why is that? Well, number one, their change to the reanimation protocol makes them significantly less durable. They have a 4-up save and a toughness 4. These guys start whittling down really, really quick, and it's very easy to take them out. On top of that, when you look at this unit that costs you quite a bit of points, you want that durability. And when I say quite a bit of points, I'm not just talking about the warriors themselves. With the warriors themselves, you're getting, you're over 200 points right there. Then you go and slap a Cryptek on there. Then you slap the Crypt Thralls in there. And then you throw an Overlord in there. All of a sudden now you're getting closer to 400 points. Let's see. You have the 2, you have the 60, you have that, you're over 300. Yeah, you're at about 400 points for these squads. So we have over 800 points dedicated in 2 20-man, well, 22 if you want to talk about the Thralls, 24 if you talk about the characters. 2 of those squads. That's a lot of points dedicated to a unit that suddenly does not have the same resilience as it would in other armies. Now, when you would put those points. Now, you could get some resilience with the Technomancer in there. And out of things like Hypercrypt, a Technomancer being the sole character with the 20-man warrior squad, good pick. Organ, not so much, because usually you want to try and get an enhancement in there for Deep Strike to be able to make those plays with them. So Technomancer, good pick. Chronomancer, also a decent pick, because then it lets them shoot and move again. I like those as well. I personally like the Chronos with the Immortals out of Hypercrypt, because you can make a 5-man squad super obnoxious, coming out from a table edge, shooting, moving, and stealing an objective as OC2. As far as the Warriors are concerned, though, a simple Technomancer in there gives you the feel no pain, and now you're not breaking the bank. You're coming at like 285, and it's a very good squad to be able to utilize for certain mission roles. It gets beat up, you pick it up, bring it back home, let it slowly start reanimating over the course of the game. Slowly reanimating is right. These guys only reanimate at D3. You get to re-roll it, but it is only D3. These squads will have a Res Orb, so I will be able to pop that for a little bit more resurrection. The Catacomb has a Res Orb, so I'll be able to pop that for a little more resurrection as well. And then we have the Crypt Thralls for a little extra defense on some of these guys. And we took the Plasmancer. Now, the reason we took the Plasmancer and not one of the more defensive ones is, again, most warriors are not being run as aggressive damage dealing outlets. I want to be able to increase that critical rate. And since we're doing Obeisance Phalanx, these guys have some different stratagem access and ability access out of the Phalanx because they're led by an Overlord. Typically, warriors are not a frontline damage unit right now. They're a Hypercrypt tool in the tool belt. And that is why I brought these guys, because I needed some infantry. I need some guys to actually play the game, because I'm still going to try and fight late. I'm still going to try and make this happen. So I needed some units, and I wanted to go with what units in that role are not being run for that role. I know that sounds really confusing, but some of it is the best I can describe it as, because the Necron Warriors are being used as a tool in a tool belt and not an aggressive outlet. All right, there is the list that I'm taking today. So there it is. That is my Obeisance Phalanx. Isn't it beautiful? And again, won't ever be competitive because there's already one illegal model in there. Okay, I dropped the gauze pylon and put something else in there. Cool. I probably have to do a lot more work to it. So this isn't something there. But it is definitely going to be a showcase on what some of these units are and why they're not seeing play. Because I know for myself, when I'm looking at an army, when I want to go to a tournament, sometimes I personally like to bring something that's a little more unique. I don't like to go straight at the meta. Yes, there are things that are crystal clear going to be good. I'm playing Canoptic Court, I'm going to run Wraiths. That's an obvious. It's not like, oh, I'm playing Canoptic Court, no Wraiths at all. Even though I've done that. I did a Canoptic Court build with Immortals, with Cryptex and stuff like that, and Xeris in there. Pretty cool. A lot of good to rerolls to hit and stuff like that were pretty nice. There were some neat things in there. But in the end, no, wasn't where it's at. Your Canoptic Court needed the Wraiths. But with this list, it gives a chance to be able to put some of these units on the table and really push them to the limit. See if there's any way we can make these things function, make these things happen, and see if some of these things maybe be slightly wrong. Maybe the Catacomb has more to show, even though it doesn't have some of these perks. Maybe the Annihilation Barge can actually do work into stuff, especially with how many models Lane's going to be bringing. Maybe the Annihilation Barge might be good for a heyday. And Warriors, maybe there's more to them than what it seems as far as Hypercrypt uses them as a tool. Maybe there is some more we can get out of them, but it's going to be tough to tell. Praetorians, sadly, this is the role that they're in. They are going to be a deep strike agent to help me score some secondary points and just kind of play that game. Nice thing is they can reanimate by themselves. So if they get a little hit and I keep them in a corner, they could be good units to be able to do things like containment and some of those harder to get secondaries, harder to get loosely, that you want to be further away. Here's a unit that can survive sheerly on the fact of reanimation protocols and things such as that nature. Gauze Pylon. Yeah, I get to run it. That's all I'm saying. That's all I really can say about that thing. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. The 5-up invol's cool for it. I could see that maybe if it was legal, that could be something to see. But that gun is horrible. I can't understand. Like there are a Tyranid Tyrannifex has a more efficient gun on it than the Gauze Pylon that literally is a fortification that is a gun. Yes, I get it. Tyrannifex is like kind of a walking tank. This is a sitting turret. I, okay. But again, it is Legends. I can't. I say this for some of the comedy sense of it, but again, it's in Legends. There's a reason. They kind of just made the rules and slapped it in there and said, "Here we go. Here it is for you that own it." Hopefully, one day maybe this thing will re-see play, and I got one already, but won't keep my fingers crossed. If there's anything that went to Legends that I'd love to see come back, it would honestly be the Sentinels and the Tombstalker. That would be something I'd be on my number one wish list to come back in a plastic or come back in some fashion. But again, probably won't see that in the near future. And same for the Gauze Pylon. It's a fortification. Games Workshop is not a big fan of making good fortifications, as we don't see many of them, if any of them at all. And flyers, this thing's got the best of both worlds. It has anti-fly on its gun. So not only is it a fortification that doesn't ever see play as it is, it's Legends and it's anti-fly, which again, flyers don't see much play unless you have hover and you are a Storm Raven and some armies. All right, guys, that's about it. I am looking forward to running this thing because it's gonna be tough. Because now it's gonna be tough to be very, very tricky and very precise going into this crude army. Because even though the crude army is not the highest of damage, the synergy behind this list is very, very strong. So I have to be very careful or I'm going to get run over real fast, which I do have a strong defense in my home deployment that I can then expand out upon later. All right, guys, as always, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.